Hi folks, how you doing? Here is another game of this Carlsen's tour in Brazil, playing a couple of rapid tournaments. In this case he's playing white against Gilberto Milos, who is black here. And Milos certainly an experienced player, rated currently 2583, not a weak GM at all, and very experienced player, and several times he has been champion of his own country, so as we will see today, well, Carlsen will end up winning, but it won't be that easy, so let's see what happened. Knight f3, Carlsen once again plays one of his favorite moves, one knight f3, d6, d4, now bishop g4, and once again Magnus leaves common opening paths very soon with a certainly logical move, queen d3. Of course, e4, c4, even knight bd2 are more popular here, but queen d3 makes all the sense in the world. Now he will recapture with the queen if black takes, so he won't double pawns. And black plays here c6 to prevent this, I guess, to prevent this queen b5 check, which could be annoying at some point. Now he can play e4, take all the center he wants, knight f6, and really here white can't choose how to develop his pieces. He can play right now bishop e2 and castle, or he could even try to play c4, then knight c3. Now lots of ways to develop here for white. Carlsen chose to play knight bd2, e6. Now e5, for instance, can't be played here by black, so he must be more or less modest with his pawns in the center. So e6 and queen e3. Now our chess trainers, you might remember, they used to say don't move the queen in the opening, that's bad, and now the world champion Magnus Carlsen goes ahead and moves it twice. Does it mean he's a bad player? Well, he's not that bad, but the point is that in this concrete position he wants to play the bishop to d3, so it makes all the sense in the world to move the queen once again. Bishop e7, bishop d3, and now black plays d5, trying to control some central squares with the pawns, not to get smashed too soon in the center. Otherwise, for instance, c4 was an option for white and he would have complete control of the central squares. d5, castle, castle. Now knight e5 is played by Carlsen. I mean, winning the bishop pair at this point and having his own bishops targeting enemy's kingside would already be quite an achievement for white. So knight e5, a nice looking centralized knight here. Bishop h5 and queen h3. White has nothing concrete yet, but is already speculating with black king security. Bishop on d3 potentially could be attacking there. The knight is well placed, the queen is already there. The move I was thinking about in this position was knight df3. I mean, to try to bring the other knight in on f2 f3, and the surprise is, in Jean's sense, it's not very good for white. In fact, it says black is slightly better after this this move sequence. A couple of exchanges, and now knight d7, and I guess that the reason is that black, as he has less space, he is now better than a couple of moves before, because he has exchanged a couple of pieces and completed development. So lucky I wasn't playing there, it was Carlsen, so he played a better move, queen h3. Now bishop g6, knight takes, h takes. Here white plays e5, knight fd7 and f4. The position is a little closed, and the pawn structure reminds me to those arising from classical French defenses, with this d4, e5, f4 white pawns, and black having this e6, e5. But okay, there are still some tricks in the position, as we will see very soon. And immediately after c5, Carlsen shows it, because it follows with bishop takes g6 check, f takes, and queen takes e6 check. Rook f7, and Magnus gets pawns for his piece, 3 pawns, and a weakened kingside for his opponent. Instead, for instance, conservative moves: c3, knight c6, knight f3. This is a good version of the French for black. He has no bad bishop. White queen seems misplaced, so this is looking good for black. But just he can't rush as I would do probably with queen b6, being a French defense player, because now once again bishop takes g6, queen takes e6, taking the knight back on d7. But anyway, c3 would be more passive for white, so Carlsen correctly sacrifices the piece. Interesting move by the world champion, and he gets three pawns for his bishop. Now he got a couple of pawns to take, and he chose to take the one on g6. Had he taken on d5, probably this is the continuation he didn't like for white. Now knight b6, and if white doesn't exchange the queens, the pawn on d4 is going to fall like this. Say queen takes d7. Now queen takes d4 check, king h1, and interesting move, bishop f6, discard attack against the queen, and queen f3, bishop takes e5. Once again, the pawn is pinned, so a little bit nasty things would be happening against white king. He would have to move a couple of ways. Note that the rook on the corner on a8 is protected by the knight. It can never be taken. So this is probably more or less the reason that white didn't take the pawn on d5. He takes on g6 rather. And well, this is more or less, he has compensation obviously for the pawn, for the piece. Sorry, he has 3 pawns, but nothing is very clear yet. Knight f8 attacking, queen g4, and c takes d4 was played. Now this gives some extra chances to white. He advances his pawn to f5, and now these 2 pawns seems more or less dangerous. White has activity in the king side, regardless of material. Simple development here was probably better. Knight c6, and well, black is resisting. Black is not bad at all here. But f5 now he plays knight c6, attacking the pawn, but knight f3, and here queen c8, attacking the pawn on f5, but this allows e6, forcing the loss of some material for black. Instead, queen b6, for instance, and well, the queen is looking at almost every corner of this board, looking fine. But anyway, e6 still possible, so a complicated position for sure. So after queen c8, e6 happened, and now this is forced more or less. Rook f6 and bishop g5. Black is losing an exchange here, so knight h7, bishop takes, queen takes. Knight takes, sorry, and now we have more or less an unbalanced middle game with a rook and a couple of pawns of white against black's bishop and knight. Queen went to g6 with a threat of knight g5 checkmating, so must be stopped with queen e8, and Magnus took take, and then as I said, an unbalanced middle game / end game with the rook and 2 pawns for white against Gilberto Milos black bishop and knight. So h3 here to avoid knight g4 e3, I imagine, to avoid this knight from being a monster piece there on e3. But anyway, knight goes to e4. Black must look for activity with his knights around g4 and rook c8, putting the rook on an open file. And actually here, well, this is still a contested game and nothing is very clear yet. So as you can see, the Brazilian veteran player wasn't scared of playing against the world champion, Magnus Carlsen. King g2 and knight b... Oops, sorry, that went too fast. Knight b4 played here. Now you're leaving d4 uncovered, but you're attacking with the rook and the knight on c2. You're also keeping an eye on a2. So knight takes d4 he played, and here a mistake. Knight takes c2. Now white will more or less pin the knight, and although there are some tactical intermediate moves, black could do a little better than this. Concretely, he had bishop f6, improving pieces, attacking the knight, and if for instance c3, now bishop takes, c takes, rook c2 check, king g1, knight d3, and black has lots of activity here, although he has a couple of knights against a rook and 3 pawns. His knights are quite active here. I guess the engine says this is better for black, and optically it looks really active and accurate for black. Instead, as I said, knight takes c2, now rook ac1, and although he has this check on e3, king f3, and now he has to play something like knight c4. Instead, it would be a mistake to play rook takes c1, rook takes c1. Now the knight on e3 is under attack, so we must play knight c4, but b3, and after knight e5 check, king e2, white will probably get in the 7th rank, where this passed pawn will be very dangerous, and this is already an unpleasant position for black. Instead, after king f3, knight c4 was played, and now rook fd1. Black was threatening to check with this knight on d2. So rook fd1, covering that possibility. And here bishop g5 was played instead of rook fd1. As I said, well, b3 would be a mistake by white because he has this check, king e2, and now takes. Even if white takes on c4, knight g3 check. Funny, now it's white who's pinned on the c file, and he's under attack. His king is checked, so this is much better for black. So rook fd1 and bishop g5 was played here, attacking the rook c2, and rook f8. Now here white had a more or less clear way of having a winning advantage. Surprising that Carlsen didn't find this a good enough position. Hard to believe he didn't see rook takes c4, d takes, and king takes, having just a couple of pawns of advantage, and really he has a strong passed pawn here. This should be winning more or less, but for someone with this technique, but really surprising that he didn't consider this a better move than knight b3, what he played. Now this is allowing knight e3. He is more or less simplifying the position. He takes on d5, knight takes d5, and king takes e4. Now he has 3 pawns against black bishop. The position once again has changed into more unbalanced positions. But this is unclear. I mean, he has a passed pawn here, but his king may be a little vulnerable. I don't know. This is a complicated position, complicated endgame. But we know Magnus Carlsen. He is very stubborn. He has a great fighting spirit. He will finally succeed here. Knight f6 was played, king f3, and now rook d8. Black is not really looking bad at all. Knight c5 attacking the pawn, and b6. Well, why not rook c8? This seems logical. Pinning the knight, it cannot go back and protect the rook at the same time. b6 is threatened. The move suggested here is to play b3. Not really sure why. So after b6, h4, and if bishop takes, go with the rook after the bishop. So exchange the light pieces. Rook takes c5, rook takes h4, but that's another pawn for black. Now white has just 2 pawns for the piece, and white rook is now quite passive. I think this is already good for black. White should be careful here. His rook is very passive on h4. Really surprised why Gilberto Milos didn't go for this. He played b6 right away. Here e7, that dangerous passed pawn is there, and the final mistake of the Brazilian player, rook c8. This is already a blunder, and the game is over with knight e4, attacking absolutely everything, attacking the rook on c8, always threatening to promote, attacking the unprotected bishop on g5, attacking as well the knight on f6. So the game is over. The reason being that after rook e8, knight takes g5, this is already 3 pawns up for white without any compensation. So black is completely lost here. That's why after 94 Milos resigned. 39 moves lasted the game, so not bad for Milos. He didn't give up until the end. So an interesting game, another of those rapid games that Magnus Carlsen played in Brazil, and hope